Greetings everyone. Welcome to video number 3 in a project management series presented by Process-Geekoid. Let's move on. So today's agenda, we will be going over 47 processes that are organized by 10 knowledge areas and 5 process groups. Everything presented is based on the PMBOK 5th edition, and the only way to learn and apply this code is to connect the dots on a daily basis. As always, please subscribe, like, and comment to this channel. So let's get on to Interstate 47 and Interstate 5. Our journey begins on Interstate 5. There are 5 process groups, which are initiation, planning, execution, monitor, controlling, and closing. Keep in mind that initiation and closing happen only once. And also, however, planning, execution, monitor, and controlling happen multiple times in cycles until the customer is happy with the product, service, or result that we as a project team intend to deliver. Next step in the journey is to get on Interstate 10. Let's go over what each of the 10 knowledge areas are really about. An easy way to get these knowledge areas here, we see here, is to understand what they really mean. And an easy way to get these knowledge areas in your head is a silly mnemonic. I saw 2 crows quietly having coffee, reading poetic songs. So this video is going over each knowledge area from a high level, and the details will follow in a future video, breaking down each knowledge area and corresponding processes, the ITTOs, inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs, in a future video. So this is really high level. So looking here, we can see that the first letter of that mnemonic that I just read out, the first letter is basically correspond to each knowledge area. So starting off with integration, we are basically putting things together to see how the project is doing as a whole. The scope. Scope is giving the boundary of how the project's purpose is supposed to be. Are we trying to make a red car or blue car, or does it have any fancy features to it? Things like that. We don't want to make something that is outside of the project bounds. We don't want to go and make a Lamborghini instead of making a Toyota Corolla. Just as an example. Time schedule. How long it will take to do a project. What is the deadline? Cost. Human capital and physical cost capital is usually estimated from top down, bottom up, or analogous estimates. And costs are usually fixed costs or basically variable costs. Then you have other division of costs such as direct costs, indirect costs, etc. We'll get into those later. Quality. Does the product, service, or result meet the voice of the customer requirement or not? So for example, if we had a phone, does the basic function, the green dial button, work or not? If we click dial on a flip phone or a smartphone, the end result should be we should be able to contact who we want to at that number. So essentially the quality is making sure that the intended function actually works. Human resources, also known as resources in PMBOK 6th edition, is basically managing human and physical capital. Communication. 90% of a PM's job is communication. How do we intend to communicate, and is it meeting the needs of all stakeholders? Risk. The probability of a negative risk or a threat, or a positive risk, also known as an opportunity, of occurring. And we are managing and controlling these risks. Of course, the ideal situation here is to minimize or mitigate the negative risks, which mitigate is a type of risk response strategy to negative risks. And also here in terms of the positive risks or opportunities, we would like to capitalize on those as much as we can and make the most out of it. Procurement is basically getting stuff. We have two parties here, buyer and seller parties. Both of the parties negotiate a contract, and the buyer is there to get what they need for the project, and the buyer should ensure the contract is being fulfilled to their need as a customer, and would need to go through some sort of procurement performance review with the seller to ensure that they get what they need and mend any issues in controlling procurements. Stakeholders, internal or external, people who are participants or are impacted by the project in any way, shape, or form. A very key stakeholder for any project is going to be the sponsor, because they are the ones giving you the money to do the project. As a result, the sponsor has the final say in terms of the budget or any other aspect of the project. So, next step in the journey is to go on and actually going over all these processes. So as you can see in this slide and the next slide, almost all project management is heavily focused on planning, execution, and monitoring and controlling. However, initiation and closing are also important. And reminder, keep in mind initiation and closing happen only once in a project life cycle. However, planning, execution, monitoring, and controlling happen multiple times in cycles until the customer is happy with the product, service, or result that we as a project team intend to deliver. So, firstly, in the initiation process group, there are a total of 2 processes. So, under integration knowledge area, shown here, there is develop project charter process. The output of this process is a project charter that must be signed off by key stakeholders before the project is planned for. Likewise, in the stakeholder knowledge area in the initiation process, we have identify stakeholders process, and the stakeholder register is an output. Secondly, in the planning process group, there are a total of 24 processes. Under integration knowledge area, the processes are develop project management plan. Under the scope knowledge area, the processes are plan scope management, collect requirements. This is usually done by the business analyst team. Then we define the scope, which yields the scope statement, and creating WBS and WBS dictionary, which breaks down the work down to the lowest level into work packages that are tied to a specific control account. And keep in mind the output of the create WBS process is going to be the scope baseline, the approved version of the scope for the whole project, which we cannot fudge, otherwise the project will be screwed. Under the schedule time knowledge area, we are all tight for time in any project. So the processes here in the planning is plan schedule management, define the activity, sequence the activity, estimate activity resources, estimate activity duration, and develop the schedule based on the activity estimate durations. Under the cost knowledge area process are plan cost management, estimate the budget for all the control accounts and the work packages for them, and develop budget takes all of the estimates from all the work packages under each control account and creates the cost baseline, which is the output. Cost baseline, just like any other baseline, is the approved version of that budget, which cannot be tweaked. And that would not be good because the sponsor is the one sponsoring your project and funding your project. Therefore, we all have to stick to the cost baseline. Under quality knowledge area, the processes are plan quality management, out of which the quality management plan is coming out of. Under human resources or resource knowledge area, as per PMBOK 6, we are planning resource management. Under communication knowledge area, we are planning communication management. Under risk knowledge area, the processes for planning are plan risk management, identify risk management, identify risk, perform qualitative risk assessment, perform quantitative risk assessment, and plan risk response. Under procurement knowledge area, we have plan procurement management, how we plan to procure items for the project or a service from another vendor. Under stakeholder knowledge area is plan stakeholder management, how we intend to engage our stakeholders, how do we plan on go about engaging them and managing them. Thirdly, in the execution process group, there are a total of 8 processes. As you can see here, under the integration knowledge area, the processes are direct and manage project workflow, or direct and manage project work, where we are creating deliverables as a project team, and work performance data or raw observations are being observed and recorded by the project team, which will then be later used down the road in the controlling process group. Under quality knowledge area, the processes are perform quality assurance. That is focused on nothing but focusing on ensuring the process is correct to prevent defects in the end product, service, or result. This is a proactive approach in achieving quality, and that is very good for the long run, because we don't want to, as the old saying goes, a stitch in time saves 9. So fixing the process would prevent us from unnecessary costs down the road in control quality. Under HR knowledge area, processes are acquire project team, develop project team, and manage project team. Under communication knowledge area, the execution here is managing communications, making sure the communications are going the way they're supposed to, and actually doing the communication using the various tools that we have, like Skype, interactive tools, messaging using email, and reporting. Under procurement knowledge area, the process, the actual conducting procurement, the execution of procurement is the act of getting a contract or agreement signed out as an output. Under stakeholders knowledge area, the processes are manage stakeholder engagement. The process of communicating and working with stakeholders. The process of communicating and working with stakeholders to meet the needs, expectations, and address the issues to foster stakeholder engagement in project activities throughout the project lifecycle. This concludes part 1 of this recording. We will now move on to part 2 coming up in the next video, which will wrap up the monitor controlling process group and the closing process group. See you in the next video.